Our gospel comes to us from Matthew, the 17th chapter. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became bright as light. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will set up 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my Son, the Beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they raised their eyes, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them, "Tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." This is the word of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. You may be seated. Would you join me in prayer? O Lord, may the meditations of my heart and the words of my mouth be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Just a quick word to everyone who came in a little bit late, just to make sure you remember, we do have 2 services today. This is our spoken morning service, and we have a 6 p.m. evening Transfiguration service. Just want people to know that in case they're wondering, where's the choir? Where's everyone? What's going on? So that's the deal. All right, I want to talk to you about figuring, about figures. So it's a weird word. We say that we could figure something out. A person also could be a literary figure, and you also have a figure. I was reminded by my buddy at the gym this week that we've got figure skating, and the figure skaters have great figures because they're always moving their butts, so they got really nice shape. They've got a good figure to them. And he wants to come up with an exercise device that gets people moving that way, so they've got a great figure as well. And on Transfiguration Sunday, we talk about a change in figure, how people and God can be found in a different configurement. And I want to talk to you about 3 parts of that today, and I'm going to talk about the 3 parts of that I think are important for us to know about, and I'm going to do them in order of ease, in terms of what is probably the easiest for me anyway, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree, to believe in, to have faith in. And I'll end with the one that I think is actually the hardest, but perhaps the most profound. So, being found in the figure of God, we today see Jesus. Thing number 1. That might actually be the most confounding, but for me, I don't know. I buy it. Something about Transfiguration Sunday where we finally get to see Jesus in the form that is transcendent and luminous and grand and holy. I actually kind of buy it. It's easy for me to believe in that because I have spent the last months and weeks and going over all these incredible miracles that Jesus has performed, things that humans aren't supposed to be able to do, and I see the holy, I see the divine in those actions. And I hear words spoken at his baptism that were very similar to today, where he's spoken about there by God in this kind of Trinitarian moment that foreshadows this moment of, "This is my Son, the Beloved, with whom I'm well pleased." I think I'm primed, maybe you are too, to see Jesus as God. And probably there's a little bit of us that should get our heads changed from, most of us here have been lifelong Christians, and the message that Jesus is God was something you were told when you were in Sunday school, you were told at your baptism, you were told at your confirmation. You've had that part drilled into you. Our disciples didn't go to Sunday school. They're learning this for the first time. So what might be easy for us to believe in, what might be the part that fits the best, might actually be the hardest for them. So that's thing number one, to kind of understand about this incredible moment. Thing number two is that, and this is where it gets a little bit harder, is that Jesus is also a human. He's a historical human. If there's one thing that even the people who don't like Christianity in the 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century will still agree with the Christians about, is that Jesus was real. I mean, he's a historical figure who has documentation around him. And indeed, many of them don't even argue about the miracles. They will say, yeah, he was a miracle worker, and yeah, he was a person, and yeah, he was put to death. They may even say, some of those sources, and he did actually live again, but they still don't like Christianity. But whatever. He is a historical human being, meaning that what's hard sometimes for me is to say he's fully human. But that is what the Creed says. The Creed doesn't just say that he was a mystery human or a proto-human or a kind of a human. It says he was fully human and fully divine, but fully human. And that puts him in continuity. That puts him along with other historical figures as people, real-life people, including Moses and Elijah, who are also real historical figures and real human beings who really are part of our legacy. I think that I have an easier time with Moses and Elijah than I do with Jesus being fully human. Why? Because I know the stories about Moses and Elijah. They're human beings who make mistakes. I look at them and I say, got it. I get it. They may have been called to a grand purpose, and whatever history required of them might be bigger or not than what's required of me, but I get that they are human beings. When Moses says, after being told, here's what I need you to do, he says, no way. Me? Absolutely not. How am I supposed to do this? I stutter. You want me to lead a people as a stutterer? And Elijah is the same way. These are human beings. I get that. I find it harder with Christ. So in many ways, I guess I'm preaching against the text this morning because we have this beautiful scene of the revelation that Christ is God, that Christ is found in the form of God. And that part's the easy part. I think the hard part is the afterwards, the coming down from the mountain, the telling other people, don't say anything about who I am. Just let them find the God in me in human form so that they can understand later what has happened through the resurrection. And here's the third and hardest part for me. And it's the part that involves us. We are also transfigured. In that great hymn, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, there's a great line there. It says that God's love transfigures you and me. And it goes on later to make that a call into action. It says, as God died to make men holy, let us live to make them free. This, of course, was a hymn that was sung regularly by Union soldiers in the Civil War. This was a call to action for them to put their bodies on the line, to put their very figures out there into history, no matter what that might entail. But they believed so strongly that what Jesus had done through the Transfiguration wasn't just something out there, it was something for us that made demands on our lives and asked us how we might be found in the form and the figure of Christ in the world. I find this the hardest part of all. And let me tell you a story real quick about why. So, remember the pandemic? Does anyone know? Did we all scrub that clean? So during the pandemic, one of the things that I did to keep my sanity was that I got into running, right? I went long distance running. And throughout my life, I've been found in different forms. My figure, I guess, has changed. I look at myself in some pictures post-college, and I see that Pabst Blue Ribbon did a lot to form the figure that I was during that time. And then we got into the pandemic, and I had little kids. So not only am I running and trying to train, I'm also trying to actually be a good parent and not just leave my kids with my wife for an hour while I go running. But so I'm taking one of them with in the stroller. And in the beginning, that was Was that Thomas at that point in time? No, I think that I had started in 2020, maybe with the tail end of Thomas, and then moved into Ellie. Because Thomas, by the end of there, that's pushing like 50 pounds. But Ellie, being born in the, 10 pound, I could do that, okay? So we go for these runs. I'm pushing the stroller. One of the ministries that kind of went on hold during the pandemic, which was difficult, was our feeding ministry called the Manna Project that we partner with Temple Sinai with. And so the people from Temple Sinai hadn't seen me in a while. I hadn't seen them in a while. We hadn't done any programs together, but we were gearing up to do it by, 2021, like late months, kind of thinking about what to do. So the first thing we did was have a Zoom call. And I had been long distance running now for a year into this, maybe even longer. And so we went on the Zoom call, and Sandra from the temple looked at me and how my figure had changed, and she said, "Oh my God, what the hell? What happened to you?" she said. I said, "Good things. I don't know. I got in shape. What are you so upset about?" But she figured that I'd become sick. She thought, my jaw was more. I just looked to her different and scared her. The figure was different. And this was a kind of lighthearted way to introduce this, but I can be honest with you, I've gone through enough long sicknesses with people, with parishioners, with family, with folks, to see the way that our figure does change as we not just grow old, but as we grow towards the end. And the form that we are found in as you get sicker and sicker and eat less and get smaller, it's the form of a skeleton. And I am haunted still, and I think probably all of us are, by at least one skeleton that we've seen poking through somebody who we've known or loved as they've approached the end. And so when I talk about why it's difficult, why it's hard to imagine the transfiguration for you and me, the transfiguration that I've seen more often in life and in people is the move towards more human, that underneathness that represents our mortality. That's the change that's most on display in my life. I told a friend last week that I'm kind of morose, so sorry about that, but it's true. It's what I've seen in my life. Which means that this is the moment of deepest faith. Because when we confront this third truth is when we are most in need of finding faith and finding the real truth. No matter how hard it sometimes is, we need to support one another in this too, and build up the truth of this matter, build up the faith, build up the belief that as our days number to their close, as we find ourselves confronting our mortality, we don't look upon endless night. We don't look upon the end of things. We actually find that in that very moment, we are transfigured into the face of God. It was mentioned in our second reading there, just kind of as passing, and we saw it in the Psalm as well. There's a through line that the Gospels want you to know, and it's about whose family you're a part of and where you're being found as a member. Through adoption, we're told by Paul, we are found in the family of God. We are given that relationship, that title, sons and daughters of God. The Transfiguration is a great Trinitarian moment because it shows that God is relationship and God's self, but that relationship desires you. It desires you to be a part of it. It asks if you too might be transfigured into something eternal that cannot be destroyed, that's form is for the world to celebrate the forgiveness and the freedom found in God, and also one that is loved forever and ever. Amen.